Hello YouTube, welcome back to the third episode of our Car Trader app series. Today we are going to start one of my favorite features of this application, the filters page. And we are going to build the make, we will build the minimum price and the maximum price. You can also see if I change the URL and I click enter, all my dropdowns will react to what we put on the URL. So without any further ado, let's start this video and I hope you like it. Before we move to the search page, it's probably a good idea to have a look into autotrader.com. This is an application in the UK to sell used cars. And the filters they have over here are the minimum price that goes up to £2 million, they have the maximum price, they have the model, and this model only works when you select a make. So we select a make and now we can select a model. So we can have something really similar to this in our own application. So before we look into the visual aspect of it, let's just do a query to get all the makes from our database, right? So let's go over here. Let's create a new folder that we call, for example, database. And I will make this call over here because I'm thinking that we will need this in more places. Probably I'm wrong and we will not, but if not, we can refactor at the end, right? So I will need this export asynchronous function, get makes, and this one will be const database equals to await open database, right? And now we need to do makes equals to await database.all, and we can do it in a nicer way. Select make count star as count from a car group by make. And this one is literally getting a list of makes with a property called count, which means how many cars we have inside that make, which is probably exactly what we need. Okay, we have this function over here, so now we can use it in more places if we need to, because in an application you will probably need to use these get makes in more than one place. So having that one over there, we can start to go to our application in the index, and one of the first things we need to do is export const getServerSideProps. And this getServerSideProps has a type, getServerSideProps, and it will be an asynchronous call. And for this asynchronous call, we can say const makes equals to await get makes. So we already get the makes over here, so we can just return props, and one of the props will be makes, which is good. So now we can probably even do something nicer, which is export an interface from here. And let's say export interface make, and the interface make is literally a make, which is a string, and a count, which is a number, right? And so over here we can even say that this get all will be a make array. So we already know what we are going to expect. Interface home props, we can say that in the home props we will receive a makes array. Okay, let's import this make from there. And so over here we can say makes, and it will be home props. So the first thing I think we should test is if we are receiving all the makes from here. So stringify makes null for. So let's go back to our page and see at least if we are receiving all the makes before we do anything else, right? So let's just rerun this one, and now we should have, we have the make Audi with counter of 1, BMW we have 3 vehicles, Fords we have 2. It seems like it's working, right? So let's start to do something with this information we have over here. The first thing we want to do is probably to have that 3D effect, right? The second one is probably to install Formik. I don't know if I installed Formik already or not. If I did, I install it again. No big deal. So we will need to have the Formik over here. So Formik, and I will have Formik over there. And if you remember from the tutorial, the first tutorial in the channel about Formik, Formik requires us to send two properties into it. The first one is the initial values and the other one is onSubmit function. So let me just import Formik because Visual Studio is probably still indexing my node modules folder, which is okay. We excuse VS Code, no big deal. And so now we can see that we immediately need an initial values, right? And those initial values, for now, I'm just passing an empty object. And the onSubmit, I will do the same thing. I will pass an empty function, okay? So we have an empty object and an empty function, I'm sorry. Inside this Formik, the first thing that I usually like to do is to grab the values from Formik. So I can start to play with these values, with these values in Formik, right? So if I need those values, they are already there. Another thing that we need is this form component from Formik. After this moment, we can start to build our own form. This is the only bits that Formik requires us to have, unless you want to use the Formik in the hooks version. But I think this version with the components is much easier to use, okay? So inside this form, we can have a paper, which is a material UI component as well, and we can say elevation equals to 5, for example. Elevation is literally what will give us that 3D effect, okay? So the next thing we want to start to think is we want to have a make, and after make we have model. So we need some kind of grid layout. So we will use grid as a container. We will import this one from material. And now inside we will have 4 grids as items. Okay, the first one will be for the make. The second one will be for the model. Then we will have one for the minimum price and one for the maximum price. So we have those 5 over here, right? And we can start to run our application again. And actually, when I have this, I want my make in super small devices, for example, your mobile phone, to use 100% of the screen. So we can do this. XS, actually, let's do all at the same time. Okay, XX equals to 12 and SM equals to 6. So when the screen is slightly bigger, we will have the same effect that we have in AutoTrader. Make, and on each side we will have the model. In the next line, we have the minimum and the maximum price. So this is starting probably to look nice. Let's go to our browser, open our browser, refresh, and now we should see make, model, minimum, and maximum. And we already have this nice 3D effect of something lifting from the screen. Probably the next thing we want is to go to Material UI, and we will grab a select. So the famous dropdowns. Let's go over here, search for the select field, and we have a select over here. And from all of those that we have here at our disposal, I think I like these two. And I think this one looks better than this right one. So let's go with this one. So this is the second counting from the bottom. Okay, so let's go to the bottom of this documentation file and copy paste this bit, right? So I just copy paste that bit and I will put it first to the make, and then when we have make working, we can start to replicate this logic for all of them, okay? So let me go over here and also copy the imports. It's easier than importing everything in VS Code. So we can just do this thing over here, and probably I'm importing too many things, but it's okay. Visual Studio then can remove them. So I imported everything I needed except this one. I don't need this class over there, and I don't need these two things because Formik already handles that for us. I also don't need this ID, and we can give a better ID to this one. So we can call it search make, and this label ID will point to search make. Over here, instead of age, we can call it make. The same for this one. And we can keep the others as they are. So we can now go to our browser. After this compiles, it's now compiled. So we can go to our browser, refresh, and after the refresh, we already have a dropdown, but this looks a bit weird, right? We want this dropdown to probably fill all the screen. Well, Material UI already handles that for us. We can come to this form control, and over here we type full width, we save, and after we save that full width, we can go back to our browser. We can see that we have this full width, so it's doing what we need, right? So the next step we probably want is we want to give some spacing from our elements, because at the moment they look like they are all together. So let's give some space for them to breathe, and we can do that over here. So we can say spacing equals to, I will say probably 3, which is 24 pixels, because it's 8 times 3, 24 pixels. Let's give it a try. Let's open this one again. And now all our elements are roughly 24 pixels apart from each other, which is good. The next thing is probably give from this paper itself some margin, or some padding, sorry, I said margin, padding. So we can do that. Let's copy this bit because it's easier if we copy, right? And we go to the top of this file and we will do use styles. And did we already import make styles or not? No, we didn't. So we can import when it starts to fail. It started to fail, so we import, and let's create a new form over here called paper. I said form, a new class over here called paper, and we can say margin will be auto, so we will center that. Then the maximum width will be probably 400, 500, 500. Let's start big, and then if we don't like it, we come back and we make it smaller. So we will have a max width of 500 pixels, and now we want some padding, and the padding can be theme.spacing, and once again 24 pixels is probably a good thing. So we will do that. We will grab these and do the following: const classes equals to use styles. So over here we can go to the paper and do class name equals to classes.paper. So now we should have some spacing, which I think it will look much better. Going back over here, refreshing, and yes, I think it looks much better now, right? Let me just test when we are in really small devices what happens. So in really small devices, this looks great. I like these. I like these. Okay, so let's go back. And over here, the next thing that we need to do is to import the Next.js router. Because if you look into AutoTrader, once again, when we search for something, I will put some random postcode and I will put an Audi 100, well, not a good number, A3, for example. Let's search for that. We can see that the model is over here in the URL. So when we refresh this page, I'm sure they do that as well. When we refresh this page, they will update these dropdowns to have the exact same value. Let's do the same thing, right? So if we do that, we can do the following: const query equals to use router. And now take into attention that sometimes VS Code, when you import router, it will import from this next/dist/client/router. And that's not where you want to import that router, okay? You want to import it directly from next/router, okay? So keep that one into your mind, because it happens sometimes and it's really annoying when that happens. So if you can keep that in mind, you will save yourself quite a few hours of debugging, right? Okay, so now that I also put those imports a bit nicer, so our next real step is to start to grab our makes and loop through the makes and start to use them, right? So let's just loop through the makes first before we do anything else. So let's say the following. Let's go to makes.mapping, and inside makes we will have a make. And so we can do the following. We can copy paste this one, and just do this. Value will be make.make. The text we will use, back quotes, and we will say make.make space, open these parentheses, and now say make.count. Okay, so this will look similar to what we saw inside AutoTrader. Let's go back to our browser, open this one, and if we open, yes, it's starting to look nice, isn't it? Okay, so next step that we want to do is, if we have some parameters, for example, let's say that I do make equals to, I don't know, Ferrari. We don't have any Ferrari, but imagine that we had a Ferrari and I refresh. I would love this dropdown to have Ferrari by default. And well, that's not happening at the moment, right? So what can we do? Well, the easiest solution is in these initial values to pass the values from the router. Okay, let's try to do something nicer. Let's say that we have const initial values is equals to make query.make or all. Okay, I need one more L or all, right? So let's say that the initial values will be those initial values over there. And so our make at the moment needs to know about Formik, right? So in order to use Formik, we have something called a field in Formik, okay? And that field receives an as, and this as we can pass our select, which means that over here we just need to do this now. Copy, paste, close that one, remove this select from here, and now remove this select and put the end of the Formik field. So now what's happening is that we can, in this field, say name equals to make. And this name equals to make with the field is what will connect Formik with this specific field. And so we will have it auto-updated. It's what some people call the two-way data binding, okay? Even though it's not two-way data binding what's happening behind the scenes, but it's one directional flow, okay? But forgetting about that, we will have now exactly what we want. So we can have this bit, and if I type Mazda, is it typed correctly? I think it is. And we refresh, we get Mazda. What's another one? Audi, for example. So if we do Audi and we refresh, we update it to Audi. So we can do now that for model, the minimum, and the maximum. Shall we? Okay, let's do that. Let's do now the same thing over here for all of them. I need just to do one small detail that I forgot, and it's completely my bad. I need to say that this value is all. So when you don't pass anything, right, let me remove all the query parameters from here, and I click enter, you will receive this none. And in reality, what we want to say is not none, but all makes, right? Because if you don't select anything, I still want to allow you to move forward and see all the cars we have in the database. And it even is in italic, so it's exactly what we want. If you don't want that in that italic, you remove this EM from there, okay? I like it because it's a different thing that catches our attention. So I really like that one. Okay, so now we can do exactly the same thing for the model, the minimum price, and the maximum price. Let me do model, min price, copy paste, and max price, copy and paste, right? So now all the query parameters will be sent to initial values in Formik, and this is really, really, really good. Let me just start to do the const and prices, because if you saw in AutoTrader, they have some ranges for the prices. So I will just put some, like between 0 and, well, they don't have 0. I think the minimum they had was 500, then they had 1,000, 5,000, 15,000, 25,000, and I'm already tired of typing values, so it's good enough. I think we don't have anything bigger than this, but if we have 1, 2, 3, that way we are safe, right? So we have already those prices over there because we are going to need those prices if we want to do exactly what we have here. So let's just copy paste this big one over here, and let's do for the minimum price. So let's say min price, and over here we will say search min price. Let's just copy this one, make sure we have this as the exact same name, and now this is minimum price. We need to update it over here to minimum price. All makes, this is all prices, and or in this one, no minimum. I think I have a typo over there, but let's just say no min. And we have no minimum. And now over here, we will just loop through the prices I created at the top. So I will just say prices. This is the price. So we can say price. And over here, I just say price, right? And now I will loop through all the prices. And the only thing we need to make sure is if we don't have any left make over here. I don't think so. So we can go to our browser, refresh. And if I type now a minimum price of, let's say, 15,000. So min price equals to 15,123. And I type enter. I should see, yeah, even better than that is if I do and make equals to Audi. Okay, I should now have the two. This is working exactly as we expect. Let's do the same thing for the max. And you may be asking, why are you leaving the model to the end, Bruno? You will see the model is a bit trickier, so I'm leaving it until the end. Okay, so let's do the maximum, because in reality the maximum is just a copy paste once again of this form control. Let's do this. Let's just say instead of search minimum is search max, over here is max price. Instead of min price, this is max price. Label ID will be maximum price. This one will be maximum price, no maximum, and the prices are the same, right? I think I don't have any bug, but let's go back to our browser, refresh. Why do I have this one open still from Material UI? I closed. So over here now, if I say and max price equals to 25,000, I think we had that option, right? So it's working as well. The last one is the model, and this one will be tricky, so I will try to be a bit slower, okay? But before I do that one, I will do one last commit, so you can then follow the model just on itself. Please like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you are not subscribed yet, and I hope to see you Friday to build the model dropdown. Bye bye!